welcome to my channel. If you're watching this, I hope you're having a great Halloween. If you're like me, you may end up spending your Halloween with a bowl of popcorn watching a scary movie. So that's kind of the purpose of why I wanted to make this video today. I know it's a little late, but I wanted to go through and list some of my favorite scary movies and give a little bit of information about why I like them, some of my favorite scenes and stuff like that. So let's get started. The first movie I wanted to mention is called The Strangers. There will be a link to it and all the other movies that I list. The Strangers is about a couple who are out in like a house or a cabin that's sort of out in a remote area, and they're terrorized by this other group of people. The movie is sort of like a psychological thriller. I personally wouldn't call it a slasher film. It really struck me the first time I saw it. I think particularly because of the masks that the other people wore, and it just gives you this sense of being isolated and being in danger, which was really scary to me. One part in particular, I don't consider this a spoiler to the movie. This girl knocks on their door, and it's a weird interaction between the two of them. She asks if someone is there, but it's just bizarre how it takes place. Like it's not as if she's trying to claim that she's stranded or needs to use the phone, or it's just some quote-unquote stranger showing up at their door, and then all this crazy stuff happens. And definitely I would say check out this movie. It might provide you with your thrills for Halloween. The second movie on my list is Pet Semetary. You've probably already seen it, but if you haven't, basically it's about a pet cemetery. It centers around the struggle between life and death, the grief that you find in that sort of loss. It also touches on the whole thing of being careful for what you wish for, and the fact that magic can turn really dark and it can be really bad if mishandled. My favorite scene from this is probably the first time that a certain group of people in the movie find the pet cemetery. It just looks like this old arcane site out in the middle of the woods. It's super creepy. In my opinion, that alone makes the movie really awesome. The next movie on my list is Poltergeist 2, The Other Side. Now, I would suggest, if you haven't seen the series, at least go and watch Poltergeist, the first one, to kind of give you some back info of what happened before. In my opinion, though, this is my favorite of the Poltergeist movies. I really like, it seems to me that there's more of a struggle in this one, particularly between good and evil. Whereas the first one was kind of redundant in the sense that it's just about something that happens, and then like a paranormal researcher shows up and solves the problem, you know. So I think there's more in this movie. Some of my favorite scenes, really any of the scenes that the character named Kane is in, he's the spirit, super creepy. Gave me nightmares when I was younger. Also, another of my favorite scenes, there again, I don't think this is a spoiler, there's a lady in a coffee shop who's just having an average conversation with someone else, and all of a sudden she becomes possessed. Like, not in a scary, you know, her face changes way, but her voice changes and she says something to someone else as the spirit has sort of taken control of her, and it's really classic and iconic and super well done. I really love that part in particular in the movie. The next movie on my list is Insidious. Now they made Insidious and then Insidious 2. I've seen both, and Insidious 2 is okay. I would say if you watch and you like Insidious, watch the second one. It's not terrible. Basically it's about a family, and their little boy falls into a coma, and there are these spirits that are trying to take over his body. One of my favorite scenes from that movie is they bring in a paranormal investigator to try to figure out what happens. And there's a scene where she does some automatic writing, and it is super intense. It seems to me to be very realistic. It's just so powerful. I think it's one of the better parts of the whole movie. The next movie that I'm going to go over, of course, probably everyone has seen this already. It's The Shining. There's so much about this movie that I could go on and on. The cinematography in it is great. It's creepy and spooky. It's about a family who goes to stay to their caretakers for a hotel that's closing down during the winter. And the little boy has some psychic abilities. And so he begins to see these spirits and these forces in this hotel. A lot of things happen, but it's definitely, if you haven't seen it, check it out. The scene that I chose, strangely, from this movie isn't frightening at all, but one of my favorite scenes from the whole film is where the caretaker, he decides, he has a conversation with the little boy about his, quote-unquote, The Shining, like his gift, and how it's affected him, and he's trying to tell him not to be afraid in the hotel and not to pay attention to what he sees. But the way it's done is really beautiful. It's haunting in a unique way, but not necessarily scary. But that's one of my favorite scenes from it. The last movie on my list, of course, is The Exorcist. I'm not even going to go into a description because the title is fairly self-explanatory. If you, for whatever reason, if you are an alien and didn't grow up on the earth, you might want to see it if you haven't. It is really frightening. It's one movie that I will not watch by myself, whether it's day or night. It creeps me out. And I don't have a favorite scene for it. I will tell you, the scene that disturbs me more so than some of the others is, I believe it might be in the director's cut. It's where the little girl does this weird spider walk thing, like down some stairs and through a house, and like her head turns, and it's just, yeah. We'll go no further with that, but anyway, it's on the last of the list. But in my opinion, as far as the scariness factor, it rates up there pretty highly. Another thing I wanted to mention, and this is not scary at all, but it's classic Halloween to me. Something that I enjoyed when I was a kid. If you want something light and not scary, but just kind of cool and reminiscent of Halloween, I would say check out Garfield's Halloween Adventure. It's just a cartoon. It's about Halloween. For me, it is a sort of nostalgia thing. So yeah, I don't have a favorite scene for that necessarily, but I really do like the part. There's a part where Garfield and Odie go to like an island sort of, and they meet a character there, and the interaction between them. That particular part I really liked. The last part of this video, this whole channel is about writing and books and things like that, so I did want to mention one quote-unquote scary book. And it's kind of ironic, when I started thinking about what I was going to do for books, I couldn't come up with anything. I've read a lot of books by Stephen King, other authors who write horror in particular, but nothing stood out in my mind. And then I remembered House of Leaves. House of Leaves is a strange book, and I think if you put yourself into it, it can really disturb you. There are certain scenes and events that take place in House of Leaves that will lend toward paranoia. Like, you'll begin to wonder about the validity of reality and what's going on. It's very intense. It's a long book, it's complicated. Typically people either love it or hate it, but I would say if you want to read a book that kind of freaks you out or makes you scared, check out House of Leaves, for sure. That's all the recommendations that I have for Halloween. There again, I'm sorry that it's late. I'm hoping to get this uploaded quickly. I may do another video tonight for the channel, because NaNoWriMo is coming up very soon. So if I do, I will see you then. Thanks for watching.